I hope she wins. I don't know if she's gonna win. I don't know if she's gonna win, but I do think that this is a good case study to how little influence pop left foreign policy has. And that's, I don't know, that's the nice way to put it. Pop left foreign policy, pop culture, like, you know, oh my gosh, we're supporting Ukraine, but the military industrial complex, oh my gosh, Taiwan's just like the Confederacy, tee-hee-hee, like this zero analysis, completely shallow. My analysis is America always bad and allows me to turn my brain off. You would rather just America just stop participating in the world, allow all of the horrible shit that's happening in the world to in some areas get worse, in other areas stay the same, but be able to remove yourself from moral culpability so you can sit on your high horse while corpses continue to be, you know, born around the world. All the same problems that existed in the world are still there. It's good. It's good that that type of pop foreign policy has no legs. It's good. I mean, who's the farthest who got with that pop foreign policy in the Democratic primary? You want to know who was the last person to get semi-far with that type of pop foreign policy? It was Tulsi Gabbard. It was Tulsi Gabbard who did bad in the Democratic primary. And then after the Democratic primary, switched parties and became a shallow tool for Donald Trump to go through and bombing wars across the Middle East, and all of the things that she had purportedly believed became quickly abandoned because, again, these were shallow beliefs and therefore it's very easy for them to abandon them. But I think, you know what, let's start with this, okay? So for those of you who have not been following the race in Illinois' 9th congressional district, it has been a mess. Essentially, there are a host of different Democrats that are running, like 4 Democrats that are getting enough numbers to be notable, or at least to have a statistical impact on the race. And many of them would describe themselves as progressives, including one candidate that was actually retweeted by Ilhan Omar last night as Rashida Tlaib's endorsement came through for another candidate, Kat. And so this created a fear within the last 48 hours, which had already been growing and snowballing in the weeks leading up to this point, that the progressive vote was going to get split and that big lobby groups, especially AIPAC, were going to be able to funnel their money in to candidates that would be their preferred, you know, person in Congress, and that they would be able to funnel in money against the candidates that were more pro-Palestinian. And in the case of Kat, who has gotten the most AIPAC funneled money against her in the last few weeks, she is a young Gen Z Palestinian Chicagoan American who is quite progressive on the issue of Palestine. Is she progressive to the point that some red triangle account on Twitter might want? No, I saw some backlash to the fact that she had made comments about the, you know, National Endowment for Democracy or things like that, like buzzwords that really freak people out. Oh, the CIA offshoot has taken hold of her. I bet she's a CIA agent. But at the end of the day, whatever they might be like shaking in their chair about, this candidate is getting railed against by AIPAC for a reason. This candidate is getting all this money brought against them in the last moment for a reason, right? All of the oppositional people who came out to say, hey, Kat, you know, I can't believe Kat is a warmonger who wants war with China. She wants war with China. I can't believe it because she supports Taiwan. I can't believe that she supports the Ukrainians. All those people either fell in line or were not relevant to begin with once the endorsements for Kat came in. And Ilhan Omar, who had soft signaled last night that she might endorse somebody else, came in and endorsed Kat. Anybody who is anybody, and you're already stretching this description of anybody, who was against Kat before, saying, you know, a Kat is an imperialist warmonger, going to work with the military-industrial complex to start a war with China, just like blatant lies. These people fell out very quick. They either remove themselves from the race entirely and they're just spitballing from the sides with no idea of what to actually do, or they got on the Kat train because as these endorsements run in, they'd rather be on the winning train. Some going out so far to even go and try to get interviews with her once successfully. So what does this say to me? Number one, the first takeaway I want to take from these recent developments is that anti-Taiwanese, anti-Ukrainian, anti-self-determination foreign policy, where we say, you know what, America's problem is being America on the world stage. Therefore, America should not be anything on the world stage. Any commitments it has had, it should retract from. And anytime America stands up to another world power, it is a risk of World War III. And so it should bend over or bow or back off on any of these international issues, whether it be freedom of navigation, whether it be Taiwanese sovereignty, whether it be support for Ukraine, whether it be any number of issues. I mean, if it could have been something as uncontroversial as West Saharan sovereignty, but if it's pitched in a certain way, then it's going to get immediate like rejection. Because for some people, good progressive foreign policy is an absence of any foreign policy, is an absence of American action. Because America is so inherently flawed in their view that America ever acting in comparison to other, world leaders like China and Russia, which always act with moral virtue and always act with up high, standing of morality. No, it's just better that we don't participate whatsoever. It is a lazy approach to foreign policy. It is saying, this is hard. I don't like having to cut hairs morally. I don't like having to make difficult choices because sometimes there's only bad choices. I don't like to have to participate in the world community or take the aesthetics of, for example, a weapons deal with a country that is threatened. I don't like the aesthetics of it. It's not very Burning Man. And so I want to distance myself from it. And that's why every single time you see any of the major creators that approach this type of politics who actually want to interact with politics, they give up on that. They either give up on it or they look past it when it comes to supporting candidates. Bernie Sanders is an example of that for the progressives who would, again, shun Taiwan and shun Ukraine, but still like Bernie, continue to support Bernie. AOC is another example of this. This is a candidate who is openly in favor of Ukraine. And while she was not able to give a straight answer when it came to Taiwan, she didn't give an anti-Taiwanese answer. Kat is another example of this. And in all of these instances, the ones that wanted to interact within the progressive movement in some serious manner accepted the fact that their pop foreign policy wasn't going to work and they got on the train anyway, as is happening with Kat right now for everybody who said that she was going to start war with China. And let me just put out there, if you really think that Kat was going to start war with China, or that was her goal, or that was going to be her effect, then she is the most damaging candidate to win. Because a thermonuclear war with the Chinese would be one of the most disastrous outcomes that could come from the Illinois 9th congressional election, right? Silly that people thought these were the stakes, but if that's your position, then every other candidate is probably better, even if one's a Zionist, because as long as there is a planet Earth, then there could be a free Palestine. If there is no planet Earth, then there is no Palestine to speak of. So if you truly believe this, the idea that within a few days you could switch your position because Ilhan, Rashida, or whatever your progressive in office told you to, you know what that shows? It shows you're hollow. It shows you don't really stand on business. It shows that you're willing to concede very quickly. But then you're expecting the Democratic Party to take you seriously when you say you're going to hold your vote when it comes to voting Harris or whoever they're going to nominate in 2028. God forbid it be Kamala Harris again. Right. So this shows once again that this type of foreign policy is weak, it's fragile, and the nervousness and the eggshells that many progressives who support Ukraine, support Taiwan, but don't know how to do it aesthetically in a way that's going to communicate with this type of class. Fuck them. Fuck them. That's my message. Fuck them. They'll get on board if they want health care. It's that simple. If somebody hates the Taiwanese and the Ukrainians and a type of moral, consistent foreign policy where we don't abandon our allies so much that they're willing to sell out advances on, Medicare for all or getting every American on healthcare, period, which would be a massive advancement in the American healthcare system. If you're willing to sell that out, not only do I question your progressive credentials, I question the seriousness at which you engage with politics in the first place to make you worth listening to. So I'm hoping and I'm praying to the Lord above that we take this as a signal that when somebody tries to go impurity test a progressive on Taiwan and their critique is don't support them at all, they're Chinese territory, back off, it's World War III, we roll our eyes in the same way that Tim Pool says Ukraine is the biggest enemy of the world, it'll cause the destruction, because it really is no different. It's just fear mongering to try to get somebody a little bit more ideologically closer to you into a position of prominence. The only problem is all of those people who are that ideologically close to you are freaks who would have to learn to bathe before they get in front of a microphone. So, that's a problem. As for other conclusions we can take from this, besides the fact that you can support Palestine, you can support Ukraine, you can support self-determination, you can hold all these positions and run in Democratic primaries. Let me just say, that is the median position in the Democratic Party now. That is the median position in the Democratic Party. Twitter and social media will promote accounts that don't hold the median position, that will get you angry for you to interact with. The median position in the Democratic Party is one that supports Ukraine, supports Palestinian self-determination, and supports the Taiwanese. We've had more support for the Taiwanese now in American history than at any other point when it comes to public polling. And Ukraine is one of the most popular countries. It doesn't matter if when they post about Ukraine, it can be cringe, it has NAFO dogs, it's like a Marvel edit. It doesn't matter. The vast majority of the Democratic Party loves Ukraine, views their resistance as admirable. Many of them don't like the Russians, not only for their style of government, not only because they want the Americans to fight each other, their interference in our elections, but also just the fact that the Russian government has been very active in supporting extremist movements that kind of want to see all Americans go to blows, and also are the bane of many of those that make up the majority of the Democratic Party. And so there is a long series of reasons, a long list as to why the Democrats fucking don't like the Russians. They like the Ukrainians. That isn't going to change anytime soon. And your John Mearsheimer lecture is not going to convince the 74-year-old wine grandma that is somehow more based than you. So right now, I'm sitting pretty good on that issue when it comes to where the Democratic Party is. The question, and this is the real question, when I asked the vice chair whether or not when we take back the House, assuming Democrats take back the House, we're going to leverage that in order to get more support for Ukraine, in the same way that the Republicans leverage Ukraine aid to delay it to try to push for immigration reform. What I was told by the vice chair is, I hope so, after having to ask the question again. So there doesn't seem to be any strong commitments from the party to actually take action on what is the overwhelming sentiment of the party. There doesn't seem to be any commitments, any promises, anything like that. Just a vague hope that when the moment comes, we'll use it in a war that will not be going on forever. You cannot just endlessly wait until a Democrat is back in the White House to do anything. If Democrats have any modicum of power, they have to use it, because number one, you don't know how long they'll have it. But number two, again, wars don't last forever. If you want to have an impact on how a war ends or how much damage it does, you have to act during the duration of the war, not look back in retrospect and pat yourself on the back because you were able to post a candle and a candle gif in a response or something. And putting all that to the side, and speaking about Kat specifically, here's another thing that's interesting here. There seems to be an acknowledgement that vote splitting is poisonous. Ro Khanna, Jamal Bowman, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. We'll wait to see if AOC does it. If they're already all getting behind her, then it might make sense for AOC to do it. But this is a lot of progressive endorsements. At the same time, seemingly being a united message that we're behind Kat, don't split the vote. I know there's a few other progressives on the vote tally, but the only way any progressive is going to win is if they all unite around one person to beat those that AIPAC is funneling money to stop them. To funneling the money to try to do anything to stop them. So there seems to be an acknowledgement of death to vote splitting, death to 5% of the vote here, 15% of the vote there. So some strategic acumen. My one problem with it is the strategic acumen may have came too little too late. If you wait until the day before an election to endorse, the effect of your endorsement is going to be heavily muted. They should have endorsed at least a week ago. At least a week ago. And that is saying something. Maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Honestly, the further back, the better. Once the polling number was clear about which progressive had the best chance of winning, and they met certain, basic standards, then the endorsements should have rolled in if the endorsements were going to come in. The problem is they might have not known at that point that the endorsements were going to roll in. They might have had other problems with, Kat hasn't lived in the district for that long and the image that could create. Maybe there was other concerns that they had about her candidacy, but waiting until the last moment, well, an endorsement at the last second is better than no endorsement at all. A lot of people who are going to be voting in the Democratic primary are going to have no idea that Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, Ilhan Omar, Ro Khanna, which is probably one of the better representatives, like really well-respected progressives in the progressive caucus. He's always on progressive media talking. He's always on like global news media, sometimes talking about issues. Definitely, he took the lead on the Jeffrey Epstein case, which got him a lot of credibility. If you do it a few weeks before, you can send out mailers with their faces on it saying, hey, look at this. This person endorses this person. Do you think Ro Khanna, the Jeffrey Epstein crusader, is credible? Well, he thinks Kat is credible. Waiting until the day before, there's not enough time to send out mailers. There's not enough time to door knock and place like material that will indicate endorsements. There's not, even with the list that they have of Democratic primary voters, they're not going to have enough time. They're probably doing all they can to do phone calls right now, to put out social media posts, spread them as far and wide as possible, send emails out to their voters to go let people know. But at the end of the day, that's only going to reach a percentage of the electorate. This should have been done much sooner. There should have been some meeting at Progressive Mount Doom or wherever they host these conversations. I assume the back of a Hot Topic or some Discord kitten call or wherever the leftists congregate. But they should have gotten together and said, look, we have to pick a candidate. The race is coming up. AIPAC is funneling money in here. AIPAC was more on the ball when it comes to trying to divide the vote and investing in dividing the vote than the progressives were in getting involved in acting. So AIPAC got to set the tone of the campaign. They got to funnel in the money. They got to control the conversation. They got to direct what conversations were being had, when they were being had, and when the ads were being played. They waited until the last second as a response to AIPAC acting. And as a response. In fact, if AIPAC did not invest this much money, who knows if they would have made any endorsement to begin with. But right when you see those first AIPAC dollars flooding in, I don't know, man. Isn't that the time to act? Bernie didn't even release an endorsement. Bernie just said he's angry that AIPAC is funneling so much money in. So there seems to be unity that AIPAC is funneling money in, but there doesn't seem to be unity about what you do to actually counter AIPAC trying to split the vote, funnel money in, and stop a progressive from getting the seat, a progressive on Palestine from getting the seat. So I think that there has to be probably faster, better coordination when it comes to the progressive movement and when to step into these races, at what moment you're going to choose to actually throw your hat into the ring. So I think those two things are pretty major. What else? I guess lastly, I'll just throw out there that this is probably one of the most successful versions of a content creator turned politician. Kat is a streamer. Kat is somebody who releases stuff on like TikTok. Kat has done activism, and you can point to her activism, like when she like got arrested by ICE and all that stuff. But she is known to most people in this country through the content she has put out, not because of that ICE arrest specifically. Like that report hit every headline in the country. That's one thing that added to her reputation. But she's one of the more successful examples of a streamer, content creator turned politician. Even if she loses tomorrow, the fact that she was actually able to garner the trust of so many progressives that are well liked in progressive circles, get their endorsement even as the bell was ringing at the last second. That shows a certain amount of political acumen. That also shows that it seems that there is a pathway for political content creator to candidate. This hasn't just happened on the progressive side, mind you. We also had that gun YouTuber winning on the Republican side in Texas. And now the other guy is going to be boxed out because he had an affair with one of his staffers who then died, ended their own life. So I think that's politically poisonous. And so it looks like that's another content creator getting into office. So this might be the first real wave of content creator elections where content creators actually won an election in the United States after going into a primary and then having to go into a general when it comes to Congress on the national level. We're not just talking about some local state delegate, local county council. So that's interesting because you could look at more established content creators like Cenk Uygur, and he bombed. I mean, his campaign, I mean, like, his name might as well have been like Dick Cheney or something in that district. I mean, he was not getting the votes. It was not happening. And he is not the first person to do it. There was also Joshua for Congress. I don't know if you guys remember him, but that was the person who hyper focused on TikTok advertising of himself as a socialist truck driver. And then after hyper focusing on social media, he ended up losing to a dead guy. A guy who had died during the process of the campaign going, who never even had a chance of winning while he was alive. He ended up getting less votes than him slightly before the, all the votes were counted. He just barely overtook him in the vote total, just barely overtook him as a living socialist candidate with a much bigger social media platform. I mean, a giant social media platform in comparison to any other candidate that was running in that race. So what have we learned from these types of social media races? Well, number one, just because you can make a good TikTok does not mean you got the sauce, okay? If you can make a good TikTok, that means you can make a good TikTok. If you can be a good streamer, that means you can be a good streamer. These things do not necessarily translate into you being able to communicate your ideas to a normal everyday person. If you're tuning into my stream right now to listen to me after this talk about the Cuban blackouts or how Trump's ego is having a demonstrably negative effect on American foreign policy by being unwilling to coordinate with allies and therefore earning their ire, not their respect and not their support. This type of focus doesn't interact with most people. Most people do not, after their 9 to 5, sit down and be like, oh, okay, let me go do some research on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So what type of labor regulations exactly are instituted if we were to have signed on during this Obama, Hillary Clinton? No, most people are going to sit home, be like, okay, I'm going to turn on Bar Rescue. I'm going to turn on like the Mass Singer or whatever. I hate that show. Mass Singer. And I'm going to just relax and chill with my family. And so you have to be able to communicate these ideas in very short periods of time, sometimes through mailers by choosing like what's the best issues to focus on. You have to stay on message. So the idea of having if you have like a 20-hour like listless stream where you're just kind of floating from topic to topic to topic, but then unable to engage with depth on any of those issues, and not able to explain like your position well in a short period because you Miranda, you kind of just go on and on and on and on and on, then you're not going to be a good campaigner. You might be a good chatter. You might be good at, being that person with a sign that says the end is near and is like rambling on the street corner, but you're not going to be a good campaigner. You have to be able to get out of bed every day and walk further than the office in your room. You're going to have to walk house to house, door to door, knock doors, be presentable, deal with people shutting their door in your face, and not get discouraged. Keep going, keep going, keep going. So, there's a real laziness problem when it comes to running. If you're lazy, good fucking luck. Unless they're going to put you on a slate and you're running for some county position that most people don't even know exists, you're going to have to go out there and grind if you're the underdog candidate. Point is, these are not skills that just come with being a streamer. And so that's why most of these content creators have failed. And so whatever success Kat has tomorrow is not the result of her being able to be, oh, look, she's a young content creator in the camera, like being, she just looks good. There has to be some sauce there. And that's why I said 2 weeks ago, just from listening to her speak about her foreign policy position, knowing that her position on Taiwan and Ukraine are not her main focus, knowing that she was getting pressure from the base of the party and she was answering morally and pretty semi consistently, much more than I think that AOC did when she was speaking at the Munich Security Conference. I think that shows a bit of the sauce, maybe even some spice in the sauce that some of our progressive caucus does not have. So again, content creators don't make good politicians, but that does not mean that if you are a content creator, you can't be one. It just means that these are not necessarily transferable skills. Public speaking might be the extent of it, and public speaking in a stream where everybody agrees with you and they're donating you $50 at a time is going to be a lot different than public speaking mano a mano with a 72-year-old grandmother who's about to ask you about Social Security, not your position on the West Bank or Ukraine for that matter. Joshua for Congress. Yeah, can you guys remember that guy?